Thank you, Lisa. And yes, it's my honor and privilege to introduce Jenny Butts. She is a former high school French and English teacher who became a BNI member in 2012. After being a member in the Seattle area for 6 years, Jenny supported several company-owned regions in director roles, and she's now serves as the director of the U.S. Core Training and Sales Execution and interim managing director of the Denver, Northern, and Western Colorado Core regions. Jenny is also a speaker, writer, and occasional MC. Her books, including 6-word lessons on effective communication, can be found on Amazon. Her life's mission is to rid the world of the misuse of apostrophes. Words are her work and grammar is her jam. Welcome, Jenny.
Hi, Dawn. Thanks. It feels right, you introducing me and me introducing you. We've done that a little bit. Hello, everyone. If we could start with my first slide, Thesha, that would be great. If you are driving the bus, thank you very much. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how we can help our chapters follow up with our visitors more effectively. But I also want to cover some ways that we can help our teams help our chapters, because I think we have more consistent influence with our teams than we do with our paying members. I often think when we put all of the burden on our members to do things, it's like asking someone to pay for a Netflix subscription and then we tell them what to watch. And so we want to influence our team more than we want to influence our chapters. And so, as you know, and Dawn just mentioned that I am part of Core Training, but I am also supporting the Denver North and Western Slope areas of Colorado. So I am living the challenges with you of trying to help our members see the things that are going to help make their businesses grow. And one thing that I have found that resonates with our teams to inspire them to support the chapters so they get to see the big picture and buy into it is something that sales expert James Muir has talked about. If we go to the next slide, you'll see a little memory trigger of who James Muir is. You may recall from the 2021 national conference that we had all online, he was one of our speakers and talked about the perfect close. And he has worked with sales, and I've been able to work with him on a couple of projects for the US Core. And one of the things that resonates most with me is when he says that sales is a noble profession. It's a noble cause. And we are trying to sell memberships because we're trying to solve the problems that professionals in our regions are having. And so what we're doing with the conversion process is trying to help our teams and our chapters understand the value in selling a membership to visitors who come into their chapters. So one of the things I think is most powerful are the 3 things that James says about what selling solutions will do. And you'll see those on the next slide. When we are selling something we believe in, and I know that you all believe in BNI as a process for your members' businesses, when we're doing that, we are helping professionals in our region either achieve a goal, fulfill a dream, or avert a crisis. And I know that if we took the rest of this call, we still wouldn't have enough time to hear story after story of how businesses and families and lives are being transformed because of what BNI does for their businesses. We know that because we hear it all the time. So how can we help our chapters? Well, we know that there are specific places where our visitor hosts can touch base with our visitors to make a real difference personally. Those are happening before, during, and after the meeting. And so that's what's going to make an impact on the businesses represented in those chapters. And what I want to concentrate on today, because this is where we've seen a lot of things changing in the last couple of years, is specifically on the orientation and on the follow-up call, because we've had lots of other calls on some of these other things, but I want to talk specifically about the orientation and how that sets us up for a successful follow-up, and then what those follow-up phone calls can look like. So if we go to the next slide, let's see, I have been chatting with Brooks McClary and the Member Success Center team, and they are talking to a lot of visitors each day as they're following up with some of the core chapters. And they are right now experiencing about a 22% conversion rate, which we are very happy with. And we would love for all of our chapters to be in the 20s on their conversion rate. But what they're finding as they're talking to these visitors is that there are kind of patterns of gaps in knowledge that visitors have after they've been in a chapter meeting and then they're getting a phone call. And so let's click through these. The first one is that they are not sure how to apply. And this one surprised me at first until I started visiting some chapters. And I'm sure this doesn't happen in your regions, but in other regions I've heard of, that sometimes even when they are having the orientation, and some chapters still aren't, when they're having it, they're not specifically asking the people to apply. Another gap that we see is that they're not sure, they don't know that there are other chapters. They don't know that there are other chapters maybe right in their town or in the city nearby. And so they don't know, they also don't know that if they missed a meeting and they registered, but they didn't go, they think, well, my chance is gone. They don't even know that they can register and visit again. We don't know. We don't know until we get into BNI. And so then the final thing that they find that they don't know is they don't realize that some chapters are online, some are on Zoom, some are in hybrid. So they think if my Tuesday morning in-person meeting doesn't work for me, I guess BNI is not for my business. And we know that's not true, but the visitors don't know it. And so we want to be sure that they have all the information and all of these gaps can be addressed with timely and effective follow-up calls. So if we go to the next slide, this will probably be an image that is familiar to you, especially if you were in San Diego in April. You would have seen this in my presentation. This is a reminder of how the visitor host efforts are combining beautifully, seamlessly even, with the automated emails and videos that our visitors are getting. So it also may serve as a reminder that people don't often read their emails. And so we need to have this combination, and our visitor hosts are clutch in this process. Just sending emails with a video from me is not enough. We want to make sure that they get touch points from real people. And so this underscores the importance of personal follow-up. They've already come to a meeting, so how do we follow up? Let's look at how we set up for the follow-up in the orientation. Let's go to the next slide. And we are trying to make these brief and interactive if we can, because our visitors have just sat through a 90-minute flawlessly executed meeting. And so now we don't want to have them listen to more lecture, but we do want to give them the information that they need. Giving them that information helps them make a decision about membership for their businesses. So we can anticipate the questions they have, even if they don't know what those questions are. So we've trained the visitor hosts in the 1,700 or so core chapters to stop beginning their orientation with, do you have any questions? We know that that's not the most effective way to open the orientation, because we know the questions they want answers to, and the questions that are kind of outlier questions, we would much rather address one-on-one so they don't distract 3 or 4 visitors in a breakout room or in an orientation. So the things we want to be sure that we cover is we want to ask what they liked. That's how you know how to have the follow-up phone conversation. If they like the structure of the meeting, then let's follow up the phone call to say, here are all the benefits of having such a great structured meeting with accountability. If they loved the relationships, then we can emphasize the sense of community and the resources in the relationships. We also want to hear from them how they're currently marketing their businesses and how it's working. This starts even subliminally to set the expectation that BNI activities are connected to their business activities. Maybe you, like I have heard BNI members say, I don't have time for all this BNI stuff because I have to run my business. And we want the subtle but clear connection to be working on BNI activities is marketing your business. So we want them to see what they're doing to market their business and compare it to BNI. And then they want to know, and I pulled a page right out of Shirley Towns' book, they want to know about time and money, don't they? They want to know, how much is this going to cost me to invest financially and time? This is when we can start to set expectations that it's a weekly meeting, we have one-to-ones, and this, so they're getting information for the first time, but it's landing in a very soft and friendly way. And we want to tell them how to apply, because if we don't ask them, then they can't. And so we want to be sure those orientations have an application element. So the next slide you'll see has some helpful elements to it. Many chapters find that having a QR code linking directly to the application for their chapter helps their follow-up and their conversion. So if we're showing this, whether it's in an in-person meeting and maybe you have a tablet or you've even just printed the QR code on cardstock, or you're using a slide, they can go right then and there, pull up the application and start the process. We want them to have the option to do that, but some people may need to talk to someone at their office or someone at home. We just want them to know that it's an option and that someone from the chapter will be calling them. If they know that there's a follow-up coming, they'll be ready for it. And we may even suggest that they text before they call. So they say, this is the BNI call that I said I was going to make. Is now a good time for me to call you, so that they know they're going to make a connection with somebody in the chapter. So then we're sending them on their way. They're very excited. They're very curious. They see all the possibilities about how BNI can work for their business. And then there are a couple of tasks we want our visitor hosts to be sure they take care of. We'll see on the next slide, the two things are marking attendance and making phone calls. Marking attendance in BNI Connect will trigger the right emails, and making phone calls will help to continue building those relationships. So let's talk first about why the marking attendance is part of the follow-up. We can just go to the next slide and then the next one right away. When we're marking attendance as quickly as possible after the meeting, then our visitors are getting the automatically triggered email that says, thank you for attending, and it has a link to apply. This is setting them up for that follow-up phone call. So it's really important that our visitor hosts do this as quickly as possible after the meeting. If we go to the next slide, you'll see what happens when they don't attend, or if they're not marked as having attended. Then they're going to get an email that says, we missed meeting you. And maybe you've gotten these emails like I have, hit reply from a visitor who says, I was there, I was there. So we want our visitor hosts to understand how to mark the attendance as timely as possible so that everybody gets the right email. When that happens, then our phone calls are set up for success. So let's talk a little bit about the phone calls, because that's where we can keep building relationships. We know they've gotten these emails that are triggered, and those emails for visitors are independent of the vice president submitting the PALMS report. So we know our visitors have gotten that, and our visitor hosts can handle that all on their own team. And I wanted to show you some maybe potential conversation starters that your visitor hosts can use if you look at the next slide. It makes perfect sense knowing that they got a link in this email to say, did you get the link to apply? And then we have some talking points here that might be helpful. Somebody who's very enthusiastic might say, yeah, I got it. I've already applied. I can't wait to see if I get accepted. I'd love to be a part of your chapter. Great. Let's have coffee. The membership committee will be reaching out to you. Let's connect. I'm so glad. Easy conversation. Maybe a little bit more common would be, I got it, but I haven't applied yet. So, well, what questions do you have? Maybe we want our coaches, our directors, and maybe you, or if you had admin help or your visitor hosts, whoever's going to be making those calls afterwards, have them comfortable walking through the application, because maybe a visitor will say, yeah, we can do it right now. If you've got 15 minutes, let's walk through it and we can submit the application right away. And if they need a little bit more help, you can help them register for another meeting. It's also an opportunity to double check that they do get the emails. It could be that the visitor host hasn't marked attendance. It also could be that they have the wrong email address, or they need to check their spam. This is a way to close the loop. These people have already come to a meeting. They're already excited. So we want them to know how to apply. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you there are some talking points. Two things we find are very effective in the conversations and follow-up are to tell stories, whether it's the visitor host story or a borrowed story, and also to talk about the benefits of a BNI membership. These are visitors who are already enthusiastic. So we want to ride that wave. And we can talk about also our own businesses. There is a visitor host in Canada who is an attorney and serves as visitor host year after year, because from visitor conversations, he averages 4 referrals a month. We want our members to have a good advantage of their leadership role. So some things that we can be doing to help our teams and our chapters We go one more slide. We can help them. One of the tools that we have come up with in some of our core regions is orientation audits. When our directors are working with the chapters, they can help hone that orientation time to set up the follow-up calls just perfectly. And so directors and visitor hosts can work together to craft something that's organic and effective messaging so they can increase their conversion. We also have been having some of our directors work with the chapters directly and help support their follow-up calls. And we want anyone who's calling a visitor to be familiar with the application process so that they could offer right then and there, why don't you pull up the link I just sent you? We'll walk through, see if you have any questions about how to fill out the application. This is a great way. If you have admin help in your region, or if you are the admin help in your region, maybe you can be helping support and add some manpower to your chapters by helping them make these follow-up calls. Because finally, if we look at our last slide, you'll see we are going to be motivated. I know you all are motivated to help as many professionals in these regions as possible. And so this process with visitor host follow-up is crucial to the life of the chapter, because we know what's good for them, and sometimes they just haven't gotten the memo yet. When I was on vacation last week, I spoke with a woman who is a yoga therapist, and she described to me what that was, but I'm still not sure I understand it. And as she was describing it, all I could think was, this niche was made for BNI. She would blow up if she were in a BNI chapter. And I was telling her all about the things that BNI offers, community and resources. We've got speed networking, and she lit up. She didn't even know anything like this existed. And I think our members forget that people need what we take for granted. And so our follow-up is going to move us in that direction of having connections with our visitors so that they can experience all that transformation that our current members have, and our regions can grow, and it'll be good for everybody's business. There you go.